The pregnant nurse, who was unjustly dismissed, mistakenly entered the morgue. Upon realizing something odd about the businessman lying there, a cry of "Get out of here, go!" startled Abigail, who was already in the corridor. She flinched as if struck, even closing her eyes. The head of the department had a remarkable voice, almost operatic. Interestingly, the head nurse once confessed that she dreamed of singing in an opera house as a child, though it seems those dreams never materialized despite her evident practice. Abby was more frightened by this cry than by losing her job. She knew she wouldn't last long at the hospital, not because she was a poor worker. In fact, she was excellent, but because her colleague, Betty, disliked her from the start. Betty believed Abby got the job through connections, which was partially true. Abby had a stroke of luck ending up there, having arrived by ambulance as a patient. She waited her turn for a blood test in the women's room, which was a grim wait. People don't end up in hospitals by ambulance for trivial reasons. An elderly lady on a stretcher was crossing herself slowly, while another woman, brought in by the arms and seated on a chair, loudly asked where her mother was. The woman on the stretcher groaned softly. Abby and a couple of other women were the only calm ones, although they too looked scared and stared at their feet. "Morrison, come for blood donation," called a voice from the corridor. Abby immediately jumped up. In the procedural room, a nurse, who seemed exhausted, was pleading tearfully, "Miss, don't tighten it like that. I can't catch the vein. Take a butterfly needle," insisted the old lady, crossing her arms. "They only take my blood with a butterfly needle. We've run out of butterfly needles. Stop being difficult, you're not the only one here." "I have many people needing blood," retorted the nurse. "I won't let you prick me without a butterfly needle," the old lady stubbornly replied. Abby shook her head, irritated. The old lady would sit there all night if needed. The nurse looked overwhelmed, and those in the women's room were getting restless. Abby intervened. "I need to give blood urgently." "Wait, you see we have a difficult patient here. Please wait a little," the nurse responded. "Yes, I see that," Abby said, taking a candy from her jeans pocket and handing it to the nurse. "Everything is fine. I'm your colleague," she whispered. "Take a break and have a caramel. I can handle capricious old ladies." The old lady frowned, sensing the conversation was about her, and she didn't like it. "Until you find a butterfly, I won't let you take blood." Abby calmly took a medical tourniquet and approached the patient. "Your arm," she commanded quietly but firmly. "Where is the butterfly? Find the butterfly or I won't let you prick me." "Butterflies are in the garden," Abby replied, rolling up the old lady's sleeve. "They flutter from flower to flower." She tied and secured the tourniquet. "It's beautiful and useful. It's called pollination. Let's get to work." "I'm talking about the butterfly needle, not actual butterflies. Where's the butterfly needle?" Abby lightly tapped her finger on the vein. "This is a hospital, not your home. Besides, when you're nervous, your veins hide, and I'll have to prick again. Make a fist. A little mosquito bite now." "You're a pro," the nurse admired as Abby escorted the old lady to the door. "I couldn't convince her for half an hour. Butterfly this, butterfly that, like dealing with kids. But she's an adult and still the same." "Well," Abby shrugged, settling into the patient chair, "I used to visit nursing homes once a week to collect blood samples. We had an agreement with those institutions. Many people there are immobile, and any change in environment is stressful for them. So, I have rich experience with grumpy old ladies and grandpas too." The nurse froze with a syringe in her hand. "Would you like to work with us? Even part-time? Today is my last day, and they still haven't found a replacement." She glanced nervously at the open door and whispered, "I can't handle it here. My nerves are shot. Maybe I'm just not cut out for this kind of work. Sometimes I just want to be rude and shout, but I can't. Give this one a butterfly needle. The sight of blood makes him dizzy. And that one acts like I'm her own granddaughter. What do you say? Agree?" "Well, even part-time," Abby nodded. "I'm actually looking for a part-time job. If we can come to an agreement with management, I can start tomorrow." "It's lucky I was brought to you." She was indeed lucky. All the urgent tests turned out to be fine, and her slight dizziness was attributed to a simple, non-scary degree of anemia. They prescribed iron supplements and immediately hired her. "We always have emergencies and a normal crazy work rhythm," the head nurse told her. "The emergency hospital is a special place. Life, death, salvation. It all mixes together every day. Emotions run high until you get used to it, and then everything starts to seem like ordinary work routine." "Well, it's a job," Abby shrugged. "We knew what profession we were choosing. It's good that you understand that. It means you won't panic or fall into hysterics either." She wasn't planning on panicking. If you've been wanting to run away from your family at the first opportunity for 10 years, then panic is contraindicated. Back then, she wanted to leave her constantly dissatisfied mother, her alcoholic father, and her younger brother, whom they doted on just because he was a boy. The main goal was to escape and never come back. She even started to prepare for her escape little by little. At night, she lay in bed, calculating everything she needed to take with her, how to get to the city without money, and what to say to be accepted into a children's home. It was restless but joyful. The thought of not having to live there anymore made her want to sing and dance. But by morning, she had to abandon her plan. Early in the morning, law enforcement officers came to the neighbor's house with a gloomy teenager in tow who had also run away from home, but not far and not for long. The boy looked sullen and hurt, but Abby could see he was hiding angry tears. She understood him. It's humiliating to be brought back like a calf on a leash. Another dream crashed. He probably had plans for a new life and saw his future as happy. Not in a few years. It turned out to be such a return of the prodigal son. Abby realized, as sad as it may be, she had to wait at least until the end of school. She also had to study. Well then, she would have more chances to get accepted and not return to her father and mother. That's when her personal hell began. Abby wasn't aiming for the stars. She went from AC to AB, and not because she lacked ability. She managed to move from one class to another anyway. But now she had to study properly. As luck would have it, the teachers, seeing that the girl was really putting in effort, loaded her with even more work. According to the 10-year-old girl, it was a terrible injustice. Then she accidentally overheard the vice principal telling a teacher, "Don't cut Morrison any slack. The others, what's the point? You give them CS and that's it. You can't get any more out of them anyway, and they don't really need more." But Abby should be kept on her toes. Of all the class, if anyone can excel, it's her. And excel she did. Both the vice principal and the principal urged her not to leave after high school but to finish school completely. "Where are you rushing off to? Understand, right now, college is the only thing you can count on. In just 2 years, you'll be in university with a higher education and opportunities." "I don't want to spend another 2 years here," said Abby. "You don't know. Let me go. I don't want to be here." "Think about it," they advised. "You'll go to college, find a job. But what about university? What kind of job is that? Who's going to support you?" No one asked her any more questions, neither at school nor at home. When her mother found out that Abby was going to the city, she just started shouting, "You have no conscience. I knew it. They warned me that there would be no use from you. They warned me. Why wouldn't there be any use? I'm going to the city to study, and it's easier for you," Abby said. "Study?" mocked her mother. "So you'll become a scholar too? You'll just go get married there. That's your education. It's only possible here. If you had a conscience, you would stay here and help raise the boy. He's the one who needs to study, not you." Abby clenched her teeth tightly. She could have said a lot to her mother. For example, that she was tired of trying her best. But her mother would always find something to criticize and would criticize trying to hurt her as much as possible. And her little brother? He was the apple of her eye. Why was everything like this? Abby didn't know the answer, but she decided simply and straightforwardly. Her mother simply doesn't love her. Why? What's the difference? She doesn't love her and that's it. So it's probably a good thing that Abby is leaving. And raise her brother? No way. They'll manage without her. Yes, she wanted to say a lot, but why bother? If her mother hasn't thought about it yet, whether she speaks or not, she won't understand. She'll push her daughter's words away like meaningless noise. So why shake the air? Farewell, mother, said Abby, leaving through the door. Say hello to father for me. Well, go, shameless girl. Just don't crawl back. Father and mother won't take you, her mother shouted. And don't need to, whispered Abby. Don't accept me. I won't come back anyway. Already on the way to the big and unfamiliar city, Abby wondered if she had made the right decision. There was a bit of everything in her soul. Doubts, sadness, and fear of the adult life she didn't know. Although, why didn't she know? She lived with elders. Well, lived probably. Were her elders really needed? No. She was only a burden to them, and they never stopped reminding her. Worse than home it certainly won't be, she told herself, and she knew she wasn't wrong. Yet, knowing it made her want to cry. Were you itching to leave home? They asked her at the admissions office. An elderly woman with smoky glasses was handling Abby's admission. With a sigh, Abby admitted the truth. She didn't like lying, and this lady didn't seem dangerous anyway. I feel sorry for you, the woman shook her head. How many girls like you do I see every year, wanting to get into any place just to escape home? Well, it seems like you didn't have an easy time. Give me your documents. Medical college turned out to be a great place, and Abigail really enjoyed studying there. They provided her with a dormitory, and she found a part-time job right away. It was all thanks to that lady with glasses who pitted the girls. The hospital is nearby, and they need a nurse, she said to Abigail. Will you go? The job isn't all roses, but medicine isn't for the squeamish. Who would argue? Abby studied for a whole year without thinking about home. She liked the city, got good roommates, and even managed to save a part of her meager salary. True, for this she had to spend the whole year in jeans from the store, but still some savings. With money, you always feel more confident. In the summer, when her roommates went home for vacation, Abby stayed alone in the dorm room. For the first time in her life, she felt how great it was to come home from work and collapse into bed in silence. By the way, the workload increased. Abby readily filled in for all the nurses going on vacation. So her first independent year went by, and at the very end of August, unexpectedly, like snow on her head, her brother Bobby arrived. Somehow, he found Abigail at work and patiently sat in the hospital square, waiting for her to finish her shift. Why don't you ever come home? He asked, as if nothing had happened. You don't visit me, you don't visit father and mother, you didn't even send Christmas cards. Abby smirked. Is anyone waiting for me there or for my cards? Why did you come, Bob? He didn't beat around the bush. We need money. Father wants to go to rehab for alcohol. Found a good clinic with a guarantee, but it's expensive. We don't have that much. Mother told me to go. She said, go to Abby. She lives in the city. She probably found a rich guy. So I came. Well, will you help the family? Will you ask your guy? What guy? Abby got annoyed. I live in a dorm, 4 of us in one room, and I'm up floors in the hospital as a nurse even for non-walking patients. You'd better remind Mother that Dad has been in rehab 4 times already. And what good is it? 2 weeks sober, and back to drinking. So you won't give me the money, right? Her brother nodded. Well, fair enough. Then at least feed me, will you?
I'm starving.
Been on the bus for 3 hours. Abby gave him a grim look. She knew he didn't want food. He just wanted to find out where she lived. Soon enough, Mother would come to visit with her usual yelling and reproaches. Fine, she said. Let's go to a cafe. I'll feed you. Why a cafe? Won't you invite me to your place? He was surprised. Won't invite. No need to. So, are you coming or what? I'll manage. Better to go home hungry than be treated like this.
Bia, sis.
And suddenly, Bobby, her spoiled little brother used to getting his way, did something incredible. He hugged Abigail, even lifted her briefly, and patted her on the head. Bye. Half an hour later, Abby discovered that gum was tangled in her hair and her wallet was missing from her pocket. For some reason, she wasn't even upset. After all, didn't she know her brother? Much sadder was the fact that her wallet contained her monthly salary. which this time was paid in cash. But overall, even that was fixable. A little later, Abby heard some interesting news. Her father didn't intend to go to rehab for alcoholism at all. Turned out that Bobby, along with his buddies, liked to go to the city on weekends and got hooked on slot machines. He swiped his sister's money out of despair because their mother refused to sponsor his addiction, and the bright idea of getting a job never crossed Bobby's mind. However, as is known, stolen goods seldom prosper. Bob blew through his sister's salary in a couple of hours and then got so mad at a faulty slot machine that he smashed it to pieces. He also took a swing at a couple of guys nearby and got into a scuffle with the security guard who asked him to behave. It ended with his arrest and a hefty fine. Upon hearing about this, their mother tracked down Abigail in the city and caught her after classes near the academic building. "We need to pay a fine," her mother said, clearly not seeing the need for lyrical digressions and immediately getting down to business. "Bob got into trouble. We need a lot of money." Abby looked at this seemingly unfamiliar woman with a mixture of surprise and dislike. She didn't even try to pretend that she missed her, that she was interested in how her daughter was doing. "No, none of that. Give money and disappear." "I don't have any," said Abby. And Bobby didn't get into trouble. He jumped into it with his own 2 feet. Let him get out of it himself. "My Bobby!" her mother exclaimed, throwing up her hands. "And you mean nothing to him? What kind of person are you? Won't stand up for your brother?" "He always had plenty of defenders without me." Abby couldn't hold back. "I said no money, and that's it." She was about to walk away, hurry on to work in her usual life, but her mother grabbed her by the coat, made her stop, and then suddenly fell to her knees and began wailing like a beast. So long and so loud that the students rushing to classes stared away. "Just give some money to your brother," her mother cried out. "You have it. Are you stingy or what?" Abby didn't know where to hide from the shame. She couldn't just tell everyone about her dysfunctional family and why her brother needed money. She leaned down to her mother and patted her on the back. Okay, I'll give what I can. Let's go find an ATM." That day, Abby was left without her year's worth of savings. Her mother snatched the money from her hands right at the ATM, quickly counted it, and tucked it deeper into her purse. "I knew you were raking in money hand over fist here," she snickered. "Well, in the end, it's for the best since you've settled here. It means we're leaving the house to Bobby. He's going to get married soon." "He's 15, Abby reminded her. "Isn't it a bit early?" That didn't seem to impress her mother. "Good ones get snapped up early," she proudly announced. "He's already got a set of twins with Tracy Smith, his classmate. He turned out to be quite sharp, and I'm glad. You can see right away he's grown up, not fooling around, starting a family. Kids will be born soon. Yes, they say a son is a mother's pride." "Give back the money," Abby said dryly. "I've changed my mind. Find your own source of pride." Her mother backed away in fear, holding on to her purse tightly just in case. "Have you gone mad? What money? You didn't give me anything. I'll start screaming that you're trying to rob me. Hey people, just go away." Abby couldn't help herself and spat on the ground. "And don't come to me anymore. Got it? Sick of your nastiness. Lies." She quickly walked to the bus stop, ready to go to work, with her mother's choice curses following her. People at the bus stop glanced around, looked at Abby, and sadly shook their heads. She wanted to disappear, but unfortunately, there was nowhere to hide. The bus stop was open, and all she could do was stare into the distance and pray for the bus to arrive quickly. Fortunately, she didn't have to wait long. Throughout her shift, Abby worked tirelessly, not allowing herself a minute of rest. It was terrifying to remember that horrible encounter with her mother, which instantly threw her into a frenzy. It was shameful, so unbearably shameful, as if it wasn't her mother but herself screaming insults, wailing on the ground, clutching the bag with the stolen money. No, it was better to scrub the floors to a mirror shine than to think about that. Only after her shift, as she lay down in her bed in the dormitory, did Abby suddenly think clearly. Now I'm an orphan, she thought. And for some reason, this thought was neither bitter nor hurtful. She even smiled as she fell asleep, and her soul felt light. No one from her family bothered her anymore. Abby finished her studies calmly. She stayed in the same hospital where she started as a janitor but now worked as a nurse. Life was getting better. The main thing was to have a profession, and what a profession it was, you could always earn a piece of bread. Maybe that's what attracted Billy, although at that time he still worked somewhere. Who would have known that he would get tired of working as soon as he and Abigail moved in together? "I'm tired of working for others," William said one evening. "Bosses always demand a lot but don't like to pay. I need to start my own business." "What, for example?" Abby asked. "Open my own gym," William said. "And you could retrain as a masseuse. Cool, right? Fitness and massage. Cool." Abby didn't object. "But it takes money for that." "I've already figured it all out." William clapped his hands. "Look, I'm not quitting yet. I'll work for another 3 months, but we'll save my salary. We'll have to tighten our belts. Can't do without it. But then in 3 months we'll already have some money on hand, and that will reduce the amount of the loan we'll have to take. At least we'll have to pay less." It was unexpected. Abby almost choked on her coffee because Billy's brilliant prospects caught her off guard. "Are you sure my salary will cover both of us and rent on top of that?" she asked. William sadly shrugged. "Well, maybe not right now," he said. "But if you find a side job." After those words, Abby was rushed away in an ambulance because suddenly everything spun before her eyes. The frightened William saw Abby pale and lose consciousness. But everything turned out fine, and now she had a side job. Abby agreed to only take half shifts. Bethany took the second half, an impressive 30-year-old blonde. "My husband earns excellently," she said languidly. "But sitting at home is boring. There's more variety here." She looked at Abby with the condescension of a lioness towards a scrawny stray cat. "You've been in the city for a while," she remarked one day, "and you have a handsome boyfriend. I've seen him pick you up from work. So tell me, why are you such a fool now?" "Why a fool?" Abby was puzzled. Bethany smirked triumphantly. "Because you work here part-time, but at your hospital you're full-time. You're supporting your hunk, aren't you?" "Oh, Abby, handsome guys are for pleasure, not for starting a family. It's like getting a bulldog for home security. What's the use? That's why you're a fool." Abby shrugged. "A patient came in for an enema. Take care of it. I need to check the system." Bethany huffed, offended, and left. But a couple of days later, Abby, opening the window for ventilation in the procedure room, saw Bethany smoking in the inner courtyard, and for some reason William was standing next to her. He was already smiling at her, the eerie feeling. She took a closer look at the body. She felt a shiver run down her spine, but she shook it off. Abby reminded herself that it was not unusual to see the dead in a hospital, and the morgue was just another part of the job. Suddenly, she heard a noise behind her. She turned around to see William standing in the doorway, looking both shocked and confused. "Abby, what are you doing here?" he asked, stepping inside. "I could ask you the same thing," she replied, trying to keep her voice steady. "I thought you were at work." I was looking for you," William said, his eyes darting around the room. "We need to talk." "About what?" Abby asked, crossing her arms. "About how you were flirting with Bethany. Or about how she got me fired." William looked down, unable to meet her gaze. "I'm sorry, Abby. I never meant for things to get out of hand. I was just, I don't know, caught up in the moment. But we need to talk about something more important." "What could be more important than you betraying me?" Abby snapped, her anger rising. "Abby, please," William said, stepping closer. "I found something in our apartment. Something you need to see." Abby's heart sank. She couldn't imagine what he was talking about, but the look on his face told her it was serious. She followed him out of the morgue and back to their apartment, her mind racing with possibilities. When they arrived, William led her to the living room and handed her a piece of paper. It was a letter, addressed to Abby from a law firm. "What's this?" she asked, her hands trembling as she unfolded the paper. "It's a letter from your father," William said quietly. "He passed away a few weeks ago. He left you something in his will." Abby felt a lump form in her throat as she read the letter. Her father, The man who had caused her so much pain had left her his house and a small sum of money. It wasn't much, but it was enough to make a difference. "I don't understand," she said, tears streaming down her face. "Why would he do this?" "Maybe he wanted to make amends," William suggested, placing a hand on her shoulder. "Maybe he realized how much he hurt you and wanted to make things right." Abby shook her head, feeling a mix of anger and sadness. "It's too late for that. He can't undo the past." "No, he can't," William agreed. "But you can decide what to do with this inheritance. You can use it to start a new life, for yourself and our baby." Abby looked up at him, her eyes widening in surprise. "How did you know?" "I found the pregnancy test in the bathroom," William admitted. "I was going to confront you about it, but then I got the letter and everything changed. Abby, I want to make things right too. I want to be there for you and our child." Abby sighed, feeling overwhelmed by the events of the day. "I don't know, William. You've hurt me so much." "I know," he said, his voice sincere. "And I'm sorry, but I'm willing to do whatever it takes to earn your trust again. Please, give me another chance." Abby looked into his eyes, searching for the truth. She wanted to believe him, to believe that they could have a future together. But the wounds were still fresh, and she wasn't sure if she could forgive him. "I need time," she finally said. "Time to think, to figure out what I want." William nodded, understanding. "Take all the time you need. I'll be here waiting." As Abby walked away, she felt a glimmer of hope. Maybe, just maybe, things could get better. She had a future to think about, a child to care for, and perhaps a chance at happiness. He spat angrily. "This is my apartment, and I'm staying. You, on the other hand, need to leave." Abby couldn't believe what she was hearing. Her heart ached as she watched the man she once thought she loved turn into a selfish stranger. "Fine," she said, her voice trembling. "I'll leave." She gathered her belongings, throwing her clothes and personal items into a suitcase with shaking hands. As she zipped it up, she took one last look at Billy. He was already on his phone, ignoring her, as if she didn't exist. Abby left the apartment, her eyes filled with tears. She had nowhere to go, no family to turn to, and now no home. She walked through the streets aimlessly, feeling utterly lost. The weight of her situation pressed down on her, making it hard to breathe. The next day, she found herself at the cafe on St. Nicholas 20, as the mysterious man had instructed. She was nervous and uncertain about meeting him, but her curiosity and desperation overruled her fears. At exactly 6 p.m., she entered About Sweets, a cozy little cafe filled with the aroma of fresh pastries and coffee. She spotted the man from the morgue sitting at a corner table, looking very much alive and quite relaxed. He waved her over with a warm smile. "Good to see you, Abby," he said, standing up to greet her. "Please have a seat." Abby sat down, still bewildered by the previous day's events. "I have so many questions," she began. "I understand," the man said gently. "First, let me introduce myself properly. My name is Michael. I work undercover for a special agency, and sometimes, well, I have to play dead." Abby's eyes widened. "Undercover? But why did you ask me to meet you here?" "Because I need your help, Abby," Michael said, leaning forward. "I know this is a lot to take in, but I believe you can assist me. You have medical training, and you're in a unique position to gather information without raising suspicion." "Help you with what?" Abby asked, feeling a mix of fear and intrigue. Michael took a deep breath. "There's a dangerous group operating in this city, involved in illegal activities that I can't disclose just yet. But I need someone on the inside, someone I can trust. And I believe that someone is you." Abby was silent for a moment, processing his words. "Why me?" she finally asked. "Because you're smart, resourceful, and you have a strong moral compass," Michael replied. "And right now, you're at a crossroads in your life. This could be an opportunity for you to make a difference and find a new direction." Abby thought about her current situation. No home, no job, and a baby on the way. It seemed like her life was falling apart, but maybe, just maybe, this was a chance to rebuild it in a new and meaningful way. "Okay," she said slowly. I'll help you, but you have to promise me that my baby and I will be safe. Michael nodded solemnly. I promise, Abby. I'll do everything in my power to ensure your safety. Welcome to the team. As they discussed the details of her new role, Abby felt a spark of hope ignite within her. She was stepping into the unknown, but for the first time in a long while, she felt a sense of purpose and the possibility of a brighter future as William hurled her shoes from the balcony, some narrowly missing her and the elderly man. They quickly retreated further from the building, finding refuge near the lilac bushes. Abby crouched down, catching her breath, while the man stood beside her, observing the spectacle with a mixture of amusement and concern. Thank you for your help, Abby said, looking up at him. I don't know what I would have done without you. Think nothing of it, he replied with a warm smile. My name is John, by the way. I'm Abby, she said, shaking his offered hand. Nice to meet you under these interesting circumstances. John chuckled. Interesting, indeed. You seem to have a lot on your plate. Abby sighed, glancing back at the apartment building. You have no idea. John's expression grew serious. Well, if you need a place to stay, I have a spare room. It's not much, but it's better than being out here. Abby hesitated for a moment, weighing her options. She didn't have many, and John's offer seemed genuine. That's very kind of you, she said. I could really use a place to stay, even if it's just for a night. Then it's settled, John said. Let's gather the rest of your things and get you settled. They worked together to collect her scattered belongings, avoiding any further projectiles from William. Once everything was gathered, they walked to John's nearby apartment. It was small but cozy, with a spare room that had a comfortable-looking bed and a window overlooking a quiet street. This is perfect, Abby said, feeling a wave of relief wash over her. Thank you, John. You're welcome, he said, setting her suitcase down. Make yourself at home. There's tea in the kitchen if you need it. I'll leave you to get settled. As John left the room, Abby sat on the bed, taking a moment to process everything that had happened. The past few days had been a whirlwind, but now she had a safe place to stay and a chance to regroup. She pulled out her phone and noticed a message from the mysterious Michael, reminding her of their meeting the next day. With a new sense of determination, Abby started planning her next steps. She had a meeting with Michael, a potential new direction for her life, and now a temporary sanctuary where she could gather her strength. It was a small glimmer of hope in what had been a very dark time. As she drifted off to sleep that night, Abby felt a renewed sense of purpose. She was ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead, with or without the support of those who had let her down. Abby and Mr. Harper walked away from the chaotic scene near the apartment building, leaving William shouting in frustration from his balcony. They headed towards Mr. Harper's home, where Abby could finally find some peace and warmth after the turbulent events with Billy. As they walked, Mr. Harper's dog trotted happily beside them, occasionally looking up at Abby with a wagging tail. She found herself smiling at the little dog's antics, grateful for the unexpected company and kindness of this stranger. I must say, Mr. Harper, Abby began as they approached his building, I really appreciate your help back there. It's been a crazy day, and you've been so kind. Mr. Harper smiled warmly. Please call me Michael, and it's my pleasure, Abby. You seemed like you could use a hand, and I'm glad I could be there. Abby nodded gratefully. Michael, then. And yes, your timing was perfect. I don't know what I would have done without your intervention. They reached Michael's apartment building, and he held the door open for Abby, motioning for her to enter first. The dog scampered ahead happily, clearly familiar with the routine. Once inside, Abby took off the borrowed coat and handed it back to Michael. Thank you again for this, she said, feeling a sense of relief at being out of the cold. And for the coffee offer. I could definitely use a warm drink. Michael waved off her thanks with a smile. No need to thank me. Let's get you settled first, and then we'll have that coffee. Feel free to make yourself comfortable. Abby followed Michael into his cozy apartment, taking in the inviting warmth and the pleasant scent of coffee brewing. She noticed a corner with a soft armchair and a small table, where Michael gestured for her to sit. I'll just grab a towel for your shoes, Michael said, disappearing briefly into another room. As Abby sat down, she couldn't help but reflect on how drastically her day had changed. From a tumultuous breakup with Billy to finding unexpected kindness in a stranger, she felt a mix of emotions: relief, gratitude, and a hint of anxiety about what the future held. Michael returned with a towel and some slippers, placing them gently in front of Abby. "Here you go," he said. "You can use these while your shoes dry off." "Thank you," Abby said again, accepting the slippers gratefully. She took off her damp socks and slipped into the warm, dry slippers, feeling a sense of comfort she hadn't felt all day. They sat down together, sipping their coffee in companionable silence for a moment. Abby felt at ease in Michael's presence, sensing that he was someone she could trust. "So," Michael began gently, breaking the silence. "What happened back there with Billy?" Abby sighed, setting her cup down. "It's a long story, but in short, he couldn't handle the news of us expecting a baby. He reacted poorly." Michael nodded sympathetically. "I'm sorry you had to go through that." Abby shrugged, trying to sound more composed than she felt. "I'll be okay. I just need to figure out what's next." Michael regarded her thoughtfully. "Well, you're welcome to stay here for as long as you need. And if there's anything I can do to help, please don't hesitate to ask." Abby smiled gratefully. "Thank you, Michael. That means a lot." They finished their coffee together, talking about lighter topics: Michael's dog, Abby's work at the hospital, and even a shared interest in books. Abby found herself relaxing in Michael's company, grateful for the respite from the chaos of her recent life. As the afternoon turned into evening, Michael offered Abby his guest room for the night. She accepted gratefully, feeling a sense of safety and relief she hadn't felt in a long time. As she settled into bed that night, Abby couldn't help but feel a glimmer of hope for the future. Despite the challenges ahead, she knew she wasn't alone anymore. With newfound determination, she drifted off to sleep, feeling grateful for the unexpected kindness of a stranger named Michael. Abby sat in Mr. Harper's cozy kitchen, her mind racing with everything she had just heard. She had been sharing her tumultuous day with him, from the chaotic breakup with Billy to the strange encounter in the morgue with the supposedly dead man who turned out to be alive. Mr. Harper, or Michael as he had asked her to call him, had listened attentively, occasionally nodding or interjecting with a sympathetic comment. But it was his revelation about Bethany that caught Abby completely off guard. "Bethany is your ex-wife?" Abby repeated, trying to wrap her head around this unexpected connection. Michael nodded solemnly. "Yes, I'm afraid so. I didn't expect her to be mentioned in our conversation, let alone in such a context. She has a way of causing trouble." Abby couldn't help but feel a mix of surprise and sympathy. "I'm sorry if my mentioning her brought up any unpleasant memories," she said softly. Michael waved a hand dismissively. "It's not your fault, Abby. Bethany and I parted ways a long time ago. She's always been difficult." Abby nodded, recalling Bethany's condescending attitude during their brief interaction at the hospital. "She certainly left an impression," Abby admitted with a wry smile. "But it's really kind of you to apologize, Michael. You didn't have to." Michael leaned forward slightly, his expression serious yet kind. "I feel responsible in a way. Bethany's behavior reflects poorly on me, and I'm sorry you had to deal with that." Abby considered his words carefully. Despite the unexpected turn of events and revelations, she found herself feeling more at ease in Michael's presence. There was a genuine warmth and sincerity about him that was comforting after the tumultuous day she had endured. "Well," Abby began, taking a sip of her coffee to gather her thoughts, "it's certainly been a day of surprises. Meeting you and your dog, hearing your stories, and now this connection to Bethany." Michael chuckled softly. "Life has a funny way of bringing people together, doesn't it?" Abby smiled back. "It does indeed." They sat in companionable silence for a moment, the warmth of the kitchen and the aroma of fresh coffee enveloping them. Abby couldn't help but feel grateful for this unexpected refuge amidst the storm of her personal life. "You know, Abby," Michael said thoughtfully, breaking the silence, "if you ever need someone to talk to or a place to stay, My door is always open to you. Abby met his gaze gratefully. Thank you, Michael. That means a lot to me. With a nod, Michael stood up and began clearing the coffee cups and cookie plate from the table. Now, how about I show you to the guest room? You must be tired after such a day. Abby nodded, feeling a wave of exhaustion wash over her now that the adrenaline had started to wear off. That would be wonderful, she replied. As they walked down the hallway towards the guest room, Abby couldn't help but reflect on how her day had taken such unexpected turns. From the heartbreak with Billy to finding kindness in a stranger like Michael, she felt a glimmer of hope for the future amidst the chaos. Here we are, Michael said, opening the door to a cozy, well-appointed guest room. Make yourself at home. There are towels in the bathroom, and feel free to rest as long as you need. Abby stepped into the room, feeling a sense of relief wash over her. Thank you again, Michael, she said sincerely, for everything. Michael smiled warmly. You're welcome, Abby. Get some rest now. We can talk more in the morning. With that, he quietly closed the door, leaving Abby to settle in for the night. She changed into comfortable pajamas, grateful for the chance to relax and reflect on the day's events. As she climbed into bed, Abby couldn't help but feel a sense of gratitude for the kindness she had encountered, despite the challenges she faced. With a hopeful heart, she drifted off to sleep, feeling reassured that she wasn't alone on this unexpected journey. Abby sat in stunned silence, trying to process the bombshell Michael had just dropped. The man who had pretended to be dead in the morgue was Michael's son. It was almost too much to comprehend after everything she had already learned about him and Bethany. I don't know what to say, Abby finally managed to utter, her voice filled with genuine surprise and sympathy. Michael sighed heavily, his expression weary yet resigned. I understand, Abby. There's a lot to take in. My son, Andrew, has always been troubled. He's had his struggles with life, and I've tried my best to help him. But sometimes, he gets himself into situations that leave me at a loss. Abby remembered Andrew's peculiar behavior in the morgue, his abrupt awakening and casual demeanor as if nothing unusual had happened. He seemed quite nonchalant about the whole situation, she remarked cautiously. Michael nodded. Yes, that's Andrew for you. He's always been unconventional, to say the least. But I never expected him to pretend to be dead in a morgue. It's reckless and irresponsible, and I worry about him. I'm sorry you had to find out this way, Abby offered softly, unsure of what else to say. Michael gave her a reassuring smile. Thank you, Abby. It's not your fault. You've had quite a day yourself. I appreciate your understanding. They sat in silence for a moment, both lost in their own thoughts. Abby couldn't shake the feeling of sympathy for Michael, who had been through so much with Bethany and now had to deal with his son's unpredictable behavior. Is there anything I can do to help? Abby asked tentatively, wanting to offer some form of support. Michael looked at her gratefully. Just being here and listening is already more than I expected, Abby. But if you have any advice or insights into dealing with complicated situations, I'm all ears. Abby considered his words carefully. She had dealt with her fair share of challenges in the hospital and in her personal life, but Michael's situation seemed to be on a different level altogether. Well, Abby began slowly, choosing her words with care. Sometimes people like Andrew might need a wake-up call or a firm hand to guide them back on track. But it's also important to show understanding and patience, especially if they're struggling with their own issues. Michael nodded thoughtfully, absorbing her advice. You're right, Abby. Perhaps it's time for a more direct approach with Andrew. I can't continue to enable his behavior. They continued to talk late into the night, sharing stories and offering each other insights and perspectives. Despite the unexpected turns of the day, Abby found herself feeling a sense of kinship with Michael, as if their paths had crossed for a reason. As the night drew to a close, Michael insisted that Abby stay in the guest room for as long as she needed. He reassured her that she was welcome in his home, and Abby felt a deep sense of gratitude for his kindness and generosity. Thank you, Michael, Abby said sincerely, before retiring to the guest room for some much-needed rest. As she lay in bed, reflecting on the day's events, Abby couldn't help but marvel at how life had a way of bringing people together in unexpected ways. Despite the challenges she faced, she felt a glimmer of hope for the future, knowing that she had found a friend in Michael during a time of turmoil. With that comforting thought, Abby drifted off to sleep, feeling grateful for the kindness and understanding she had encountered amidst the chaos of her life. "Here, like cleaning or cooking, we have a housekeeper for that," he said. "You absolutely don't need to." "No," Abby quickly decided. "I can't do that, Mr. Harper. I'll feel indebted because of it. Let's make a deal. I'll walk your dog. How about that?" He squinted slightly. "I definitely like this girl." "Deal," he said warmly. "And now let me show you the house completely. After all, you're going to live here." A year later, Abby strolled down the street with her daughter, husband Raymond, and Mr. Harper, now a cherished part of their family. A year ago, Raymond had initially sought Abby's help as a potential informant regarding a suspected black market at the hospital where she used to work. However, their relationship had blossomed beyond professional boundaries, culminating in the birth of Lil Jane and a deep familial bond with Mr. Harper. "I always dreamed of having a daughter," Mr. Harper remarked, beaming at Abby as they walked. "Meeting you at the maternity hospital, it felt like a blessing. I'm lucky to have 4 wonderful sons, but a daughter is a dream come true." Abby looked at Mr. Harper, seeing the contentment and joy etched on his rejuvenated face. The tumultuous times with Billy and Bethany seemed like a distant memory now. The love and support from Raymond and Mr. Harper had brought her a newfound happiness and stability she never thought possible. As they walked, reminiscing about their first meeting at the cafe and the unexpected turns life had taken since then, Abby couldn't help but marvel at how life had turned out. Despite the challenges she had faced, she found herself surrounded by love and family, making her feel grateful for the twists and turns that had led her here. It seems like the story concludes on a note of newfound happiness and family unity for Abby, Raymond, and Mr. Harper, contrasted with the continued turmoil of characters like Bethany and William. The final scene shows them enjoying a walk together, reflecting on their journey and the chance encounters that brought them together. Here's the edited version. "I can't do that, Mr. Harper. I'll feel indebted because of it. Let's make a deal. I'll walk your dog. How about that?" Abby quickly decided. He slightly squinted. "Definitely like this girl." "Deal," he warmly agreed. "And now let me show you the house completely. After all, you're going to live here." A year later, Abby walked down the street with her daughter, husband and Mr. Harper. A year ago, Raymond had initially sought Abby's help as a potential informant regarding a suspected black market at the hospital where she used to work. However, their relationship had blossomed beyond professional boundaries. Abby gave birth to Lil Jane, and both Raymond and Mr. Harper fell in love with the tiny girl who resembled her mother. "I always dreamed of having a daughter," Mr. Harper remarked, meeting Abigail from the maternity hospital. "I'm lucky to have 4 wonderful sons, but a daughter is a dream come true." Abby looked at Mr. Harper's rejuvenated face with happiness, feeling that the past was now a distant memory. The tumultuous times with Billy seemed like a bad dream, leaving only slight confusion behind. As they walked, discussing plans for the weekend with enthusiasm, Mr. Harper suddenly remarked, "Abby, we met here for the first time." She laughed. "We got so carried away talking that we didn't even notice." "Shameless," Anatoly shouted from the balcony, breaking the momentary peace. "This guy still can't calm down." Then, Betty emerged from the entrance, dressed seasonably. "Shameless," she yelled back, her voice echoing through the neighborhood. Down came women's clothes, shoes, and the contents of a cosmetics bag. "Am I shameless?" Bethany retorted. "You lied to me, said you were rolling in money while you're patching up your last pair of pants and even mooching off me." William sincerely wondered, "Are you afraid to spend money on your beloved man?" Mr. Harper said quietly, "It seems we're superfluous in this story. If you enjoyed the story, please support it with a like and a comment. All the best to you."